All right. They only want equality in all caps when it benefits in all caps them. I don't really understand why those two words were the ones that were chosen for capitalization. That doesn't really make much sense to me. But here we are. That's the way the cookie crumbles. Let's see. Do we recognize anyone? No, not recognizing anyone in this part of the clip. Let's see who else we got. Yeah, they only want equality when it benefits them. I think I saw Rachel Wilson in the thumbnail, so here we go again.
Okay, didn't you say you were feminist? Feminist.
Okay. Casual college student, probably, says she's a feminist, has no idea what that means or entails or anything like that. Just, it's the right thing in her mind. Maybe actual feminist, kind of given those vibes, looks a little bit older. This is another college student like her, probably says the word feminist. They're looking a little trad. They might be more traditional, probably still on the liberalish side of things, but yeah, let's see. Who says they're a feminist? I like to guess first. It's more fun that
Not
way.
a feminist.
50-50. Hey,
Not
I
a
said
feminist.
split.
Oh, okay. And now we got two more rando college students he found. Helmet girl with no helmet. Rachel, Brian. Okay. Cool. Let's see.
50.
Okay.
Well,
Here's another question that we can kind of figure out here. Should women be drafted? This is an effort
Absolutely not.
to figure out if you guys are feminist or not. Should women be drafted in the military?
Like, by drafted, do you mean like when you turn 18, like you're automatically
Okay, yeah, so
drafted?
men have to register for the selective service. Currently, there's not a draft in the United
Boo-hoo.
States, but all men in the United States at 18, in order to be able to vote and have other benefits, they have to register for the selective service, which would then make them subject to military conscription in the case that there was a military conflict which required a draft. So do you think women should be subject to selective service draft? Forced?
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. Okay.
I wouldn't even trust women to like fight for our country unless that's like that's their thing, you know, like if you're like that type of woman that you feel like you're stronger and stuff like that, but I just feel like no.
Okay. What do you think?
well, hold on. So you think they should be drafted based on how they feel?
No.
That is not drafting. Again, I think so far my guesses were pretty correct. She doesn't know what she's talking about. Brian's gonna go crazy on her over this one topic, and she's not gonna know what they're talking about the whole time.
No,
About-
I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying if like willingly if you just want to
She's saying if they want to
No,
volunteer.
just really want to volunteer. Yeah,
If
yeah.
they want
Okay, that's not a draft. That's just what we normally have when it's not a draft.
to volunteer, yes.
Yeah, but then that just defeats
Which
the
is-
purpose.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean,
Right. Well, that's what we currently have.
yeah, but I guess we should be drafted because I mean,
Okay. All right.
I mean, plenty of men don't want to join.
Okay.
Plenty of men, plenty of men, plenty of women. Doesn't matter.
Okay.
If we gotta do what we gotta do, I mean, yeah.
Now, here's the interesting thing. You guys both have different opinions on this. I still don't know which is actually like the actual feminist position. Because we'll have feminists who will argue. It's actually, we had one last week with Andrew, who said, well, it's not equitable. It's not equity for women to be drafted. That's a whole nother thing.
Interesting.
But what about you?
No.
No? Okay.
No, women should not be drafted.
Should not be drafted,
No.
but they should be paid equally in sporting events.
No comment.
Okay.
Sports, you get paid based on what you bring in. End of story.
No.
They shouldn't be drafted?
I don't think so.
Well, hold on.
Okay, so everybody except Anza
Yeah.
said women shouldn't be drafted, but y'all want to be equal? So wait a sec. How are you equal if the men are the ones that have to fight and die to defend the country? The men are the ones that build and maintain all the infrastructure, right? Like none
Yeah, that's our job.
of this stuff in the studio is built or maintained by women. Do you know that like 90% of infrastructure jobs are still held by men? and that if you look at the top 20 jobs held by women now in 2024 versus 1924 are almost the exact same. So women have had 100 years to do whatever they want, and they still do the same 20 jobs they did 100 years ago, other than we switched out farm labor for HR work. But other
This is true, but it's not a dunk. It's not even a point. It literally is irrelevant. The more equality that a country has, the more people generally end up in their sort of trending toward their traditional gender jobs. So, I mean, this is just, it's not a dunk. It's totally pointless.
Other than that, we're secretaries, nurses, daycare ladies, early childhood education, administrative assistants, retail workers, all the same shit that we were a century ago. So if the men are the ones tasked with every time there's a natural disaster, they have to go out and rescue people from the fires and the floodwaters, and every time there's a war, the men have to go and fight it and defend the country, and anytime there's a criminal who needs to be violently arrested, it's going to be a man who goes and does that, not a woman. Where does the equality come in? If we're doing the fluffy jobs, you know, we're all singers, we got a lot of singers and musicians, which is cool, it's great, I love music too. But y'all ain't like rescuing people and, you know, doing the...
First of all, some of them are, not that it's relevant, some of them are. Equality is not about everyone splitting everything 50-50. Every, you know, half of women and half of men are, or half of plumbers are men, half of plumbers are women, half CEOs are men, half CEOs are women, half of nurses are men. That's not what it's about. It's about letting everyone migrate into the fields that they excel in without putting up barriers. That's what equality is. It's not making sure that if men are all the plumbers, then women take up half of the plumbing. Like, it's nonsense. This is a nonsense argument. It means nothing.
Doing the heavy lifting or the dirty or the dangerous jobs, like who collects the trash? Men. You know, who does all the steel working and oil rig work and all of the like sewer cleaning? Men.
Tower making.
We have a video on this, Rachel, actually. Nick, remember that video we were looking at yesterday? I think it might still be on one of the tabs. Let's watch this. No audio. No audio. Go ahead.
It's tough out there. I do HVAC.
Yeah, go ahead.
Crawl around in crawl spaces
Are you
and in
ready to
attics,
work on an
and
oil rig?
it's not fun.
All right.
Come on, feminists, get in there. You
Those
can
are
do
some
it.
roughnecks.
Come on,
That's-
ladies. Ladies, anyone?
definitely
Andrew,
not.
That
Andrew
I don't
had to
even
do
know if
stuff
I
like
would
that
do.
back in the day.
The
They'd
scuba
lower him
stuff-
into
Underwater welding.
That one I'm not
not
super
underwater,
into.
but they would lower him into these tiny little horrifically frightening spaces to do extremely dangerous stuff.
I'm claustrophobic.
I really feel like
Yeah.
women should just have the choice to do it if they want to, because I know some women that can handle it.
They do have the
Yeah.
choice, and they're
That's-
not.
They
Okay.
do, and they're not
doing it.
They
That's
don't
fine.
want to.
Well,
Whoop-de-doo. Who cares? What they're who cares?
This is the
that's
big
fine.
secret,
Yeah.
right? Is that women don't want to do any of this dirty,
so-
dangerous, scary stuff. They don't want to.
Well, yeah, but is that just, you know, what we've been raised with, the culture
No.
we're surrounded by?
No, and I have data to back this up. So
Okay.
if you...
Oh, is there more, Nick? Just let it play.
Yeah, we'll just let it play. So back around the time of suffrage, we're talking like 1850s to 1920, roughly around there when the big suffrage movement was happening. Did you guys know that most women were completely against it? By all of the referendums that they would do where they would let women vote on whether they wanted to vote, only about 4% actually had any interest in voting. And they actually had really good reasons for this. There was much higher membership in anti-suffrage groups than pro-suffrage groups. And these groups would do public debates. They would do written debates.
Yeah, it's because they didn't want to get drafted or have like debt and stuff like that. But eventually they all came around. And they got the vote without the draft. So good for them.
Newspaper periodicals where they would go back and forth and debate these things. And the women who were against suffrage said, look, the primary purpose of government is to protect persons and property, okay? Why task women with that when we're not really capable of doing that, okay? We don't want to have to be drafted. We don't want to have to do jury duty. We don't want to have to be a political bloc because back then women had advocacy groups for things they wanted, but they weren't a lobbying group. They didn't have like voting rights, so they weren't able to be as easily politicized. They felt like they had a moral high ground to ask for things like, we need more parks, we need better schools, we need clean air, whatever it was. And that if they became just another voting bloc, they would be involved in dirty politics, and they didn't want to do that. They felt like somebody has to be morally neutral and not involved in politics. So, given all of that, do you guys think that women can protect and defend persons and property?
Sure.
Okay,
I mean,
how?
well, first of all, I want to go back to the fact that for a long time, women weren't allowed to own property, or at least not without being married. And so,
Actually, it was the opposite. It was once you got married, you generally, whatever belonged to you belonged to your
sure,
husband,
but
so you
then
couldn't
usually the woman is still living with the family.
Right,
And
but why would you, so think about
Yeah.
why.
Why would you wanna
do
live on your own?
Why do you think women didn't own property?
Because it was farms. Like, why would you leave your parents' house if it meant you had to take care of a 20-acre farm? Unless you had a family. Like, this is crazy.
well,
Do you think it was just the patriarchy, like just
No, I'm
hated
not
the
saying
women
that.
and
I'm
they
not
just
saying
wanted
that.
to put their boot
Yes, that's what it was. We just hated all the women. That's why.
on their neck and keep them down?
Thanks, Rachel.
I
Or-
generally don't think that.
Okay, what do you think?
I generally think it was just a matter of the times. Like, you know, because it was. I mean,
Like, literally, not nobody. Some people think that, but nobody with brain cells thinks that.
So do you think there was a reason, though? Do you think there was a logic behind not letting
I think it
women own
worked for
property?
back then. I think it worked for what it is at that point in time.
No, I don't think you understand what I'm
Sure.
saying. So
Okay.
if you're a woman
Yeah.
and you own land and it's 1802,
She understands what you're
and
saying.
bandits or cattle robbers or Indians come and they say, we're taking your land,
Yeah.
what are you going to do about it?
But that's exactly my point. That worked for that time.
Okay, what's
Yeah,
different now?
we don't.
We don't have that as
Oh my
much.
God,
I mean,
everything.
it depends on the neighborhood, of course. And
Everything is different now, Rachel. Jesus.
I mean, it depends on the community,
Okay,
et
so
cetera.
if you own land now in 2024 and you have a squatter who comes and squats on your property and you need them removed,
I did
do
that.
do you call ladies to come and physically remove them, or are there men who come and physically remove them?
So I had a subleaser who I needed to get rid of, and I did all of it. My landlord didn't do anything.
Okay, what'd you do?
I went to the court, and
Okay.
I got the papers. I took her to court. I won.
Oh wait, as a woman squatter?
Yeah.
Oh. Well, okay, but did you physically remove
Oh, that doesn't really fit with my narrative, so it doesn't count.
her, or did cops come?
Well, did she willingly, after the judgment from the court, she willingly left?
So, okay, the lease was up. She refused to leave. And, so, you know, I got the paperwork. I gave her the 3-day notice to vacate, which is the proper way to
Right, you're going through the eviction process.
Oh,
exactly.
this is a long
and
one.
so then,
We
you know,
probably won't.
she
Well,
was still
maybe
like,
we'll watch
that's
the whole
not
thing.
right. It's totally illegal, even though I got it literally from the courthouse. And so then we're like, okay, let's get the proper eviction papers. Mind you, we still had the papers escorted by
Okay,
cops.
So did you both went to the court and there was like the eviction trial?
Yeah, and we did.
Okay.
Well, I mean, not the eviction trial.
So then-
So she did leave within the 5 days of receiving the eviction.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But, so let's say she stayed there, right?
Yeah.
Because I think this is what Rachel is getting at. Let's say she stayed there, you even won the eviction case,
Yeah.
the judge did an order, I don't know, typically after the eviction, I think they have another period of time, it depends on the state.
Yeah.
It can be 10 days, 30 days, whatever it is. And then the cops will come after a certain period of time and then forcibly remove the person. I think what Rachel's trying to get at is
Right.
who's going to forcibly remove the person, whether man or woman, if they were, even after getting a judgment from a court, they still refuse to leave.
Right. Okay. So in this case, because she left within the 5 days, I didn't have to have like the sheriff remove her.
Right.
But and I mean, at least when I was giving the papers, the cops that were there were men and women. Yes, primarily men, but there were women. I mean,
Right,
who's to
but-
say there can't be more?
Well, you're talking about the process server? So you served her with the...
So it was my mother who served her, but because of the threats she was making, we had her escorted by foot patrol.
Brian's always asking these like follow-up questions like he doesn't understand. Like, how do you not understand what she just explained to you? Like, actually, how do you not understand? It was so easy.
And that was not like a bunch of strong, independent women who marched.
It
her
was
out
a
of
man
there.
and a woman.
Okay. And if it had just been a woman, do you see what I'm getting at? Do you see, like,
You're getting at nothing.
who defends our national borders? Not a bunch of feminists, right? The
Who cares? It's not relevant to anything.
use of force is still always going to be men.
I mean, of course,
like when you come
men
down
are
to it.
taller and bigger. Of course,
Yeah.
they're gonna have
No, you
that
didn't.
physical. Well, I always got it. I always
Right.
understood.
Right.
I mean, going back to the sports things. I mean, the men are gonna be able to do things that women just physically
Right.
can't. But
So, when we talk about equality, the only equality women have is the illusion of equality granted to them and provided for them by men.
sure. I mean, that's why I think it depends
Yep. And we will continue to do that. There's still no point at all.
on the context when it comes to equality. Personally,
But if you have to appeal to men and say, men, let us be equal. We demand equality. And the men go, fine, we'll enforce equality. Is that really equality?
well,
It's not real in the sense, first of all, nothing is real. Everything is socially constructed. Allowing women equal access to positions that they are fully capable of performing is not the same as them being completely equal to men. We're not equal. We're not better or worse than each other. We have complementary traits for the most part. And we live in a society where a lot of those things have been replaced by technology. So women don't need to sit at home doing laundry all day. We have washing machines. Like none of this needs they're no longer needed. Neither of us are either fully needed for our roles traditionally anymore. We don't have to do a lot of those things. There are a couple things that we do still have to do. For example, women will always be the only ones that can give birth, and men will generally be the enforcement arm of the government and the protectors of rights and whatnot. That's the only two things that we really have to do still. So yes, she's saying a lot of technically true things that just don't matter. They don't matter at all.
well, that's why I think it depends on how it is being handled. Personally, I think
So it's
there's-
up to the men. Basically. It's
Well-
always going to when
well,
you get
because
down
they're
to it,
already
be up
in
to
that
the men.
position. If we could flip it, and then they'd have to ask us, right? I mean,
Okay. So you think we could put women on all the oil rigs, and we could put women in the Senate, we could put women in the military as generals, we could make them sheriffs, and that would work out fine?
yeah.
Do you think so? Okay.
I mean, well, here's the thing. Okay. For example, I remember watching this one show. I think it was called Stars and Stripes, and it took a bunch of celebrities and put them in the position of military. It had men, it had women. The person who ended up winning was the skier Peekaboo Streets, and she was a woman. She beat out actually Sarah Palin.
that guy?
She ended up beating
It's a good
out
question.
like Sarah
I don't know who
Palin's
that guy is.
husband.
this is a reality
Wait,
show?
where's this where is this going?
Well, for example, she ended up winning. She was in, but they were all put in position of military, and she ended up winning. It was a woman.
So, do you think that men and women are the same?
I don't think they're the same. I don't. Again, I think
Yeah,
physically,
no one thinks
there
we're
are
the same.
Okay.
Um,
Just physically.
There's some crazy, specific, radical wave of feminism that wanted us to try to be the same, but that's not super popular anymore, and nobody thinks this anymore.
Though, like you don't
Nobody.
think that men have certain strengths and women have certain strengths, and they each have like different divinely appointed roles in existence.
Well, I'm an atheist personally.
Okay. Well, not okay. Do you think that they have appointed roles in society in order for society to be mostly successful?
I think that's how it's come to be.
So, can I ask you another question?
Yeah.
Do you think that women are happier today, or do you think that they were happier before all of this stuff?
They were happier before, but that has nothing to do with them getting into new jobs and whatnot. That has a lot more to do with I would say the main thing that's made women unhappy is probably side effects from the sexual revolution and other side effects from the internet and social media. I think those are probably the two main things that have made everyone pretty unhappy. Because men are a lot less happy as well.
I
No.
Good
think
question.
Because it's proven that women
Well-
are way less happier today.
okay, but is that just the stats we're looking at now? As in, like, those are the stats we're taking?
That's just ignorance is bliss.
Yeah, because I mean, for example, like people like to make the argument that you know, we're seeing a rise in autism. Okay, is it the fact that there's a rise in autism, or did we just not take into account the fact that, you know, we didn't know what it was before?
Well, so
Well, I
I
think people know
I
what
can
happiness
actually
was.
explain this because it's like my area of specialty.
Sure.
There's surveys that were done, like very large scale surveys that were done in the 70s, and then again in the 90s, and then again in the early 2000s.
Yeah,
So
everyone's less happy.
the
Thanks,
first
Rachel.
one that
We
came
know.
out was called The Paradox of Female Happiness, where when they surveyed women all over the West and asked them if they were what their satisfaction levels were, a ton of different metrics were used. In the 70s, pretty good, pretty happy, not a lot wrong. By the time we get to the 90s and they repeat the survey, women are declining in happiness in the places that they have the most freedom, the most egalitarian societies. So the places where women have the most equality are the places where
So I'm going to back that up really quick. This chatter on the whatever podcast just put a bunch of laughing, crying faces and completely delusional. You have to be so caught up in your ideology of just woman ruined everything to believe that anyone at this table is completely delusional. I assume he's referring to our feminist friend here, the one that they're arguing with. But to think anyone at this table is completely delusional is crazy. You are truly delusional, Pinkerton 7, whatever your name is. Yeah, that's absurd, man. I don't know who can help you.
most egalitarian societies. So the places where women have the most equality are the places where we see them not only reporting that they have higher levels of self unhappiness, but also we see a rise in alcoholism, fetal alcohol syndrome.
Wait, Rachel. Just a minute ago, you said that the most egalitarian places, men and women, naturally more went to their gender roles. So does that mean that what is the word? This isn't the right word, but does that mean that when we generally align with our gender roles, we're less happy and we have fetal alcohol syndrome? Like, what are you even saying?
Depression,
It's completely contradictory to what she was just saying a few minutes ago.
anxiety, prescription drug use. Every metric they look at, women are reporting that they are less happy. Now, there's a lot of reasons we could talk about why that might be,
Sure.
but I think people don't
There's two main reasons, which I outlined about 5 minutes ago.
understand that when women are trying to be equal, it makes life pretty impossible. You end up thinking you can have it all, do it all, be it all. Your expectations are wildly high, and you expect that you're going to be able to have a husband and a family and a career and do whatever you want, but also have a man who's going to take care of stuff. And these things all contradict each other. These things do not like mesh together well.
Only I'll give her one of those things does contradict each other. You can absolutely have a family and a job and all of those things. We do have this problem where women are working the same amount as men, they're making the same amount of money, and they're still expecting men to be providers. It's not all women, but there's a good number. It's if you only watch this podcast, then you'd think it was literally all of them, but it's not. There's a huge selection bias when it comes to women that would ever be on this podcast to begin with. And that kind of attitude does need to change because the family finances need to become more 50-50, especially if women are going to be working. If they're not, though, then there's no reason for that at all, really. But yeah, that is the one little thing that she just said snuck in there that was kind of correct. It's and it's a problem because a lot of relationships are ending over this sort of financial issues. And it's because our attitude about financial issues are for some reason still very traditional, but the way we divvy out income between men and women is much more modern. It is kind of a problem. But it's not a problem in the way she's about to try to explain that it is. And most of those other things were just nonsense.
On top of that, women are more emotionally volatile. We have a hormonal cycle every month that, you know, fluctuates. We have pre-menopause, we have postpartum, you know, we have a lot of ups and downs
Okay,
that men
and
don't have.
why does that make us more emotional? Because and I'm genuinely
Because
asking.
of the literal hormone
Well,
in your
hold
body.
on. I know. But I mean, for example, let's look at like history here. So much war has been caused by men.
She's gonna cite there's a study that was done where they looked at the difference between kings and queens and who went to war more. Queens were slightly more likely to send troops to war. It's totally irrelevant. We don't have kings and queens anymore. It's this absurd talking point.
Well, I have something for this actually.
Yeah.
So I mean, they looked at monarchs, for example, kings and queens, and they actually found that
Exactly. Yeah,
queens
nobody
were
cares.
just as or even more likely to wage war than kings.
Oh, I'm not disagreeing. I think there's some real messed up women in history too. Truly.
No, but they did like an analysis here. I'm not just
There were way less queens in charge of wars. It's just a total non sequitur. Like, this is not the dunk that you think it is.
saying there were some queens. They just comparing all of the. I don't know if it was the English monarchs, the British monarchs. I don't recall exactly the specific
Sure.
details of this analysis they did, but they did find that queens were more likely to wage war than kings.
Okay.
Just wanted to put that in there.
Sure. I mean, are we looking at it statistically as in, I mean, let's be real, there were probably still more kings in history than there were ever like queens that were
But it's
really in
it's
charge.
per capita.
Okay,
right?
so it is per capita.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I can't speak to that personally.
So
but
why would we think that men are going to start more war if women are more emotionally
Well-
volatile and less rational and less logical on average?
well, maybe
than
we'd
men
know
are?
that if we were taught more about those women as well. Because I mean, personally, I mean, I'm just gonna be honest with you. I mean, how many women in history can we actually name?
A ton.
Well, I mean, talking in that specific position to cause a war.
I mean, I'm an Orthodox
Not many.
Christian, and we have
Yeah.
tons of different queens and princesses and women who
sure.
were in various leadership positions and
Sure,
waged
but I mean-
horrific war on their enemies and
Sure.
things like that.
It's
so.
I mean, it's just usually, I mean, we see, you know, queens that are just with a king. Yes. Oh,
You're getting
Sorry,
a little
sorry.
cut
Well,
off
that
there.
would be, I could give you that, except that in the modern age we have a whole bunch more data that proves that this is not the case.
Okay.
For example, when you look at juvenile correction facilities or
Mm-hmm.
women's prisons, so we were just talking about how men have the monopoly on force.
Yeah.
So men in male prisons, things like that. Generally, men grow up using physical force. And when they're little, they do rough and tumble play with their dad, with their siblings, with their friends, and they kind of learn where the boundaries are of like, how much can I beat up my friend before I go too far and actually cause harm? So they tend to learn that young, and it has an impact. Women don't have those same experiences. So what we see is that when women do have the monopoly on force, for instance, when you are a female guard in a juvenile facility or a female guard in a women's prison, the women guards are far more likely to be abusive, and the abuse tends to be worse than men. And
I have heard that.
they do think it's partially because of our emotional
Moral of the story: young girls should fight each other more. I think we can all get on board with that. Yeah.
volatility or hormonal fluctuations, and also just because women tend to be more likely to be on prescription psychiatric medications, have mental illnesses, and
They're more likely to seek out therapy and psychiatric care than men are.
And just be less
So obviously they're more heavily diagnosed with those things.
used to knowing where the boundary is. So when women lose their shit and get physical, they tend to escalate to a point that's a lot
Okay.
worse than what a man
Can I
would
ask
do.
then, is some of this
And we have our friend Pinkerton7 again, all caps, because he's literally sitting at his desktop cranking it as hard as he can while he internally screams at these women for not agreeing with Rachel. Delusional opera girl, oh, she's an opera singer, that's nice, is asking for the smoke and Rachel is bringing it. Fire, fire, fire. Yeah, I don't think so, buddy.
maybe because, also we hear a lot that women don't get the resources they need in the medical field.
You mean like mental health wise?
I'm not talking necessarily mental health. Like for me personally, it took years to get diagnosed with chronic illness.
Okay.
And there's a lot of that. And there's also not as much like research on women in medicine. Again, going back to autism.
How does that relate to like the
Well,
violence?
I think I kind of know what you're talking about a little bit. I'd like to offer up a bit of a rebuttal.
Okay.
So I think you're talking perhaps about how there's less testing of certain drugs
Yeah, so
on
I mean-
women, or like less things are tested on women. My rebuttal though there would be, well, one thing that's a concern is if you're testing an experimental drug on somebody, if the woman happens to be pregnant but she doesn't know it, there could be ramifications there when it comes, because for example, some medications are not recommended if you're pregnant. For example, so if you're testing something experimental, the woman doesn't know she's pregnant. Obviously it could be very rare that, she's happened to be partaking in the trial. And
I'm pretty sure that the medical professionals who oversee medical testing and trials can figure out if a woman is pregnant or not. But thanks, Brian.
she's pregnant, that could be one of the justifications for why they're more inclined to test things on men. There's also like this component of, well, women, when women's hormones tend to shift a bit more throughout their cycle, so I think it's better to test on someone who has their hormones are a bit
and
more level.
I get the
But the other
stability.
thing is, it's not clear to me if it's some privilege to
Yes, not have to be tested on.
have like experimental drugs
Yes.
tested on you. That seems like it would be a negative, like men are so desperate for money and resources that they're willing to have experimental drugs tested on them. I think if it was actually the reverse, if it was 100% women where we were testing drugs on them, there would be a huge outcry from feminists saying, wait, why are we like subjugating women specifically to this drug treatment? That seems like,
I get what you're saying. I mean, I personally wouldn't be opposed to that.
Okay.
But
if it was 100% women,
yeah, I honestly think it's kind of necessary because
sure, but I feel like feminists would just argue and be like,
I
wait,
mean,
hold
you-
on, this is like, look at how this is unfair.
This
Like,
isn't
why
equal.
are women
You're not
being
gonna hear that
tested
from
on?
me personally,
Okay,
but-
all right, well, that's fine.
No, I mean, for example, this is a more minor thing, but like, okay,
Most of the people who engage in testing of new drugs and new medical procedures and whatnot are actually college students. So they're not like poor, destitute, homeless men. They're college students, which are actually mostly women. So if women wanted to partake in these trials and such, or if they needed women to partake, or they wanted women to partake in these trials more, which they should, they have the access. This is another crazy argument. He takes an article and basically just runs with the title of the article without trying to apply the logic to how the world actually works or understanding any of the nuances of it. It's just really annoying.
why has recently when they test like tampons or pads, it's only now they're using real menstrual blood rather than like water or
But how does
it's different.
I just wonder how this gets back to what we were debating, which was why
Well, okay,
can
so-
women defend persons and property?
yeah, to tie back to that.
If a hurricane takes out half the eastern
Who cares? Who cares if they can? We have police, we have infrastructure that is designed for this. there are so many explanations and reasons as for why this point is just moot and irrelevant. It doesn't matter. It doesn't help her point at all.
Seaboard are the
Because she hasn't said it yet explicitly, but she's essentially arguing that women shouldn't be allowed to vote. That's what she's basically getting around to. Men do the protecting, so they are the only ones that have skin in the game, so they should be the only ones voting. And it's just not true. It's just crazy.
women gonna get out there and get the power lines back up and put the sandbags out and rescue people from the floodwaters and rebuild
They
everything?
might.
I mean, I
They
would
do
certainly
that.
hope so.
No, they can't.
I
They
mean-
can't do it.
Some of them do that.
Ben George donated $200.
Yo, thank you, Ben. Appreciate it, man.
So you claimed men are more dangerous and advocate for women, yet want examples of powerful women abusing power? Use Google image search for teacher arrested for essay. 90% are images of women in power.
I agree. I agree. I mean,
There's definitely a lot of that. A couple quick things.
Yeah.
Rachel, you were talking about like, how aggression tends to
It's true, but not strictly relevant to anything they're talking about.
manifest, especially young boys, for example. Would you, I don't know if you're kind of familiar with this, like how men's aggression, especially at an early age, tends to manifest itself more in in the physical realm.
Yeah.
But isn't it the case that women's aggression will manifest? It might not manifest itself in the physical realm, but it will still manifest
Oh, yeah.
itself regardless.
use-
So
women-
reputation destruction.
Yeah,
for
women
example.
use subterfuge, manipulation, gossip, that sort of thing because, right, if you can't use physical force to get your way, those are the things you're going to
no, that's
default
true.
to. So.
I mean, that's something we see in history as well. I mean,
Yeah.
I have a question.
No,
yeah.
Sorry.
Wait, one more thing, actually. One more thing. Also, when it comes to like physical, I don't know, were we talking about like violence at all? I don't know if that was kind of.
Yeah, we
A little
were
bit.
like military, and then we, yeah.
So, I mean, what do you think about this? So, I mean, you were saying, well, men throughout history have been a bit more violent. So I saw this. I've seen the stat a couple times. So, if we're looking at heterosexual couples, lesbian couples, and gay couples, we actually find that, for example, gay couples, so two men in a relationship, the rate of domestic violence is actually
Yeah, so this is a very interesting statistic, but it is true. The more women that are in a relationship, the more likely there is to be domestic violence. It's very interesting. Gay men don't really hurt each other that often. Heterosexual couples kind of in the middle, and then lesbians just don't seem to be able to stop. It's very interesting information. Not sure how it's strictly relevant to this.
actually lowest amongst homosexual gay men. It's in the middle for heterosexual couples, and the incidence rate of domestic violence in lesbian couples is actually the highest.
Okay.
So that's an interesting.
Their divorce rate is also the highest, a second only to polyamorous couples, which is just basically like a total disaster.
thing, because when you have two men, you would think, well, men tend to be more violent. Why is it then
Can I
that when you
play-
put two men in a relationship,
Yeah.
the incidence of violence, domestic violence, is the lowest?
Okay, can I play
And in
devil's
When
advocate?
there's two women together, it's the highest.
Oh, can I play devil's advocate for a second?
Go ahead.
Okay, so we like to typically, I think, make out anyone who's, let's say, gay to be, well, they're more feminine. And then we look at women who are lesbian and we're like, well, they're more masculine. So is that what in the brain, what's making that happen then?
This is similar to what
That is an interesting theory. I don't know if that's true. I would have to look into that more. But that's certainly an interesting theory. I don't actually think that lesbians are generally more masculine. I think that's more of like some stereotypes do have some founding in statistics and reality. I don't know how I feel about that one, but we could look into it.
what I wanted to ask. Do we believe that
I mean, that's a fair question, but go ahead.
like
Yeah,
every
fair question.
female, well, first of all, women and men, we both have testosterone and estrogen, right?
Yeah.
And it can be imbalanced. So I feel like it depends on the person, and we can't like box everything in.
Sure.
Well, yeah,
Going back
but
to
we can
health.
take a look at statistical averages, and another important data point is that although when men tend to do domestic violence, the damage can be greater, women are more likely to initiate domestic violence.
Do you love the way she said that? It can be greater. It's almost always. Men obviously do more damage in cases of domestic violence. We're way more likely to end up accidentally or intentionally ending our partner's lives. Like, that's an insane way to try to like brush that under the rug. And you'll notice this is something that she does with any fact or statistic that isn't like super convenient to her her worldview.
Than men, and men are less likely to report it than women are.
Because they're less likely to be believed.
I'll give you that.
Yeah.
I want to go back to the draft really quick.
Yeah, go for it.
I
of
wanted
course
to
you
go
do.
back to you two guys. I think both of you said no, women shouldn't be drafted. I was just curious, why not?
I said that too.
I think because there's a difference between men and women. Because men are, physically stronger, and like,
Sure.
I feel like, I don't know, if you enlist everybody, then.
So can I ask you a question, a follow-up on that? So you say men are physically stronger. Do you think then, if that's the case, if women shouldn't be subject to forced military conscription, should women be barred from volunteering for the military?
No, I think.
Well, why? So why are they barred from forced military conscription, but they're able to volunteer? Because it occurs to me, like, for example, in peacetime, or in wartime, there could perhaps be a greater need for more soldiers. Whereas in peacetime, do you need them?
Women just join the military so they can get free college.
Oh, wow.
Wait, so men are stronger. That's
Even
why.
though-
And, the hundreds of thousands of support roles that are completely necessary, and many of which are generally better filled by women. Maybe it's that too. This woman is absurd.
That benefit isn't really even happening anymore.
And then what about you? You said women should not be drafted. Why is that?
Well, when I said it was for the same reason that like men are physically stronger, and I was for what you said about like volunteering. I feel like the women who choose to volunteer would be physically strong as well, but like.
Oh, were you gonna come in on this? Or?
Okay, well then, yeah, I'm not gonna deny men are physically stronger. That's just a thing. But then, you were saying how, women have to use their brain because they gotta make up for what they lack in strength, right? So then, who's to say that the brains can't be used in situations in the military as well?
Well, that would be a great point as well, except for this thing called greater male variability, which if you look at, you can look at a number of different metrics. I was just on Timcast and we were talking about grip strength as an example,
I saw that.
but you can do it with IQ, you can do it with all different measures of aptitude. And what we see is that women tend to cluster around the mean more than men. And there's this small percentage of men and in anything that are so much better at everybody else that it's like not even close. So as a woman, if you're trying to be a CEO, a general in the military, a strategist in the military, trying to be a police officer, a
Yeah, there's more men at the ends, but there's still women at the ends.
detective, anything
It's
like
literally
that,
crazy.
you're going to have to compete with this tiny
Private chat.
top tier of men that is going to be so far ahead of you that the odds of you beating them are very, very small, which is why even after 100 years of equality, we don't see a lot of women at the top of these highly competitive pursuits, like being a CEO, like being a 4-star general in the military, like being the president, things like that. So it's one of the differences that makes it really tough for women to compete. So even if you're very smart for a woman, you may not be able to compete with that top tier of men.
I don't like that.
Statistically.
So you're saying men are just naturally smarter?
Well,
I'm
you
saying
mentioned
that
the
the top-
variability
yes,
thing, right?
the
Nick, can you pull that up? We'll just
Yeah.
look at it. So there's this, this is like, Nick, can you make it smaller, please? Yeah. And then I'm also going to find you just the article. Hold on. I'm sending that to you in private chat. Pull that up, please. get it quick if you can.
Whoop-de-doo.
So it's this idea that I think isn't it even the case that women are on average smarter?
Yes.
Or is it?
There's more of us that are in that middle gathering around the mean.
So I'll read this really quick.
Okay.
But the men who are smartest are way ahead. Generally.
The variability hypothesis, also known as the greater male variability hypothesis, is the hypothesis that males generally display greater variability in traits than females. Pull that one back up, Nick. The chart. Just click on it. Okay. So basically, what they're saying is that there's more stupid men. There's there's a lot more dumb men.
Sure.
But there's also a greater proportion of really, really smart men.
Okay.
But then there's more women who are in the middle.
Right.
Okay, then that kind of goes back to my point, though. Then if there's more women in the middle, then what's the harm then of actually? Because that means we're having greater odds of having smart women than we are. We're risking more by having a.
I'm not
defined
saying
a higher.
smart women.
This girl is doing pretty well for not being a professional debater and trying to debate Rachel Wilson on a dating podcast. She's doing pretty well. Obviously she doesn't know how to immediately clap back on all these things. If I was there, it would be different, obviously. If Erudite was there, it would be different. There's really not that many center-left debaters
Women can't.
at all. I guess Destiny, but he's basically blacklisted from half of the internet at this point. But yeah, it's she's doing pretty good for not having the immediate stuff to back it up with. She is kind of doing a little dodge and weave every time Rachel brings up a point. She'll dodge to a new point instead of confronting it head on. But she's doing a pretty good job.
Do smart girl things. I'm a smart woman who does smart girl things.
Clearly.
But
That could be debated, Rachel.
when we're talking about who should be at the apex of society running things, generally men are going to have the monopoly on force, strength, cognitive skills, leadership skills, social skills. They're just that top bit of men are going to be so far ahead.
Okay, but going back to your point, then how does that affect the draft? Because that's not the top tier. That draft
no,
is
but
just...
the draft is just you have to be physically capable, and you
Sure.
are a tiny girl.
I know.
If you had to jump in tomorrow and do the PT prescriptions that men have when
literally
they join
have
the
a booster
military,
seat.
yeah, you could do it. And I'm a really strong girl. I've done powerlifting and weightlifting for years. I've got a 250-pound for 5 reps deadlift right now. I've got a 200-pound squat. But you put me next to a man who's my size that doesn't even train, and he's gonna whoop my ass.
But for example, what if there's an
That's true. The first time I deadlifted, I did 300 for 10 reps.
emergency situation, when you're out in the field, I think I'm okay to say this.
Now, if carrying heavy equipment around, outdoor condensers and giant air handlers, and even previously when I was a stagehand, all of that equipment in and out of trucks and stuff, that kind of counts as training. So I guess I did cheat a little bit.
More likely to see a man just kind of brute his way through it rather than think how can we problem solve this so nobody gets more injured or in a less risky situation, I should say. So
you think that on average women are more strategic than men?
I'm not saying strategic, but
It's not about more or less. It's not about more or less. Women who are extremely strategic should have access to those roles so that we're getting the best of everybody we can that is strategic. This is not complicated.
if we're looking at
Oh, I wish I had a earpiece in her ear and I could feed her all these answers.
the mean average of, the brain kind of thing, sorry, then, wouldn't it be fair to say that they're going to be more able to look at those situations better than the average we're seeing based off the graph you gave us?
I'm not really sure what you're asking.
So, in those risky situations, then if the mean average is that, the women are gonna overall have a decent IQ, then they'd be more likely to handle those risky situations where we really need to think about it than, say, the average we're going to find.
That's not really how it works. And when you're entering the military, they test you.
Sure,
right?
I know
so
that.
If you're below a certain IQ, you're not going to be in the field doing certain things for that
obviously.
Are you
reason.
saying that we assess risk differently?
Right.
And men do not take as much time to assess those risks, and they just jump right in.
Well, women are more risk averse, but usually in a military situation, that's going to be bad.
Well, yes.
Right.
No, you want to be on your toes because, of course, you never know what's going to happen.
Women are very conflict avoidant, and on average, they don't want to be in the military.
Well, here's the thing then. Then why is there a problem having an equal amount, like an equal opportunity for drafting men and drafting women then? So that means we're having equal risk takers and equal, maybe not risk takers. Do we want that fair bit of both?
So what you're telling me is, all throughout human history, armies have been made of men. Sure. And now, because it's 2024 and technology, we should put all of, look at the table of ladies here. You all are lovely. You're probably great singers. You're beautiful. But do I want you on the front lines fighting? No, I don't.
Sure, I get that.
I want women on the front lines. I'm a feminist.
So she
send them.
you
know what? I think we do a total switch up. Men don't get to get drafted, and we just draft the women. Use the women as meat shields for a little bit. Soften the enemy up a little bit. Then the men can come in.
I think something that's interesting.
Take care of it. We'll take care of it. The women soften them up.
I think something that's interesting is that you're saying we have equal portions of men and women entering the military, but then what you would have to do is you would have to separate those roles once they enter the military, and then then it's not equal anymore. So what is the point of doing that?
I do get what you're saying. Well, I mean, based off the physical stuff like we're talking about again, I think that would have to depend on the woman. I mean, look at some of the women in the Olympics; they could totally do it, right?
Could they?
Yeah,
like who?
I mean, those are also outliers as well.
Like 1%.
I know they're outliers.
So when we're talking about this kind of stuff, you have to think about in general, the women in general and bigger numbers.
Sure.
Olympians are.
I'm not denying that. I think if anything, if we are going to have a.
Who cares? Yeah, it'll be more men. It'll be mostly men. Who cares? That isn't relevant to this conversation at all. This is crazy.
Draft with women. We need to, we all have to go
We definitely shouldn't draft women though. That's also crazy.
through a physical, even if we're being drafted, right? So, I mean, we then assess, okay, what can we best put them to?
Well, then, most women are not going to meet the requirements. And
it depends on the position.
That they've opened up all of the special forces to women for 20, 30 years now? 20 years, something like that? Not a single woman has been able to pass Navy SEALs or BUDS or the different Green Beret training. Women just can't do it.
Well, and going along with that, I wouldn't want them to lower that standard so that women could.
They do. No. But here's the thing.
Oh, they have to do less push-ups.
It is a different standard. And this isn't just for the military. It's for police force, firefighters.
Yeah.
So I think for the military, there's a speed test in terms of being able to complete a mile or I don't know how long.
Oh yeah, there's a physical to be a police officer. Have you seen some of those overweight, donut eating garbage disposals? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Push-ups.
Well, this is the thing is women always will say we want to be equal, so you have to let us do these things. You have to, first of all, if they have to let you, it's not equal. Right. Second of all, if they have to lower the standard for you to get in, it's also not equal. So it's all just this illusion, this silly illusion, and I don't want to. I'm sick of it. I think that
she's sick of it.
I think that in the not so distant future, a few generations from now, they're going to look back on this feminist experiment and go, "Whoa, that was a disaster. Glad we got rid of that."
There are a couple of parts of it that have been a disaster. Honestly, the biggest disaster ever was just calling it feminism. What a disaster that was. But other parts of it, specifically just letting women who can do the other role, yeah, it's not going to be mostly military, like, but who cares? Like, that's totally not relevant. But the part that hasn't been a disaster is just generally letting women fall into place where they do fit based on merit, which is how everything should be. We should have a pure meritocracy. Very simple.
That because it's simply not sustainable. We can't
We're
even
finally
keep going
getting to
with
the
it
end of this
because
one.
birth rates have tanked.
This was wild.
So
This was just a
either-
giant
maybe it
non-argument.
won't go
I mean,
away, and then
there was
humanity will
no
just go
conclusion. There was
There will be a
no. There was
reset, and,
nothing. It's
like,
crazy.
People always ask me what I think it'll be, and I think it's going to be painful and ugly. There's like a couple ways it could go, but it's not going to be fun for anyone when it happens.
How do you
Whoever
anticipate
gets
it?
AI
I'm sorry.
first.
Hold up. Hold up.
I don't want to, not so distant future, a few generations from now, get rid of that because it's simply not sustainable. We can't even keep going with it because birth rates have tanked.
Right.
Right.
No.
So
Right. The birth rate thing. So the birth rate thing is not because of women having equal opportunity. It's because of the sexual revolution, dating apps, social media, and some of the traditional financial relationship alignments that don't really work anymore, but for some reason we haven't gotten that out of our brains for the most part. But yeah, it's those things. It's not because of women some of them wanting to be in the army or go to work. Like, this is insanity.
So either
Tanked.
maybe it won't go.
All right, that's the end of that one.